mann som veksler brød og snusbøller.
Good morning, everyone. Hello, world. This is Shauna with Disrupt Apps once again, and moving along with the tutorial series. I'm happy to be back. And today we are going to start learning about JavaScript. And I really enjoy working with JavaScript. And just to go over a brief overview of what we've learned so far, coming to our code, we learned about the basics about HTML tags. We learned about how to link an external style sheet, and we've learned about divs and anchor tags and h1 tags and p tags and breaks, line breaks, and we learned about classes, which is really important for our styling. We've learned about IDs, and we've done a lot of great styling. You know, we've learned some really great basic styling techniques, like how to make your body be 100% of the screen instead of having margins on the side. And we've learned about font family. We learned the concepts of container. And remember, we have our container, which is the parent, and the child, which is the nav menu wrapper. And of course, the parent, and of course, the nav menu wrapper is the parent of the nav and of course the nav menu wrapper is the parent of the nav menu items children. And we also learned about coming back here, we learned about these being block level elements like divs, and p's being block level elements that take up the whole screen and have margins on the top and bottom. And then we learned about inline elements, which are anchor tags that only take up as much space as they need, and they have no margins. And then we learned about how to use inline block, display inline block, so we can have really granular control over our elements and, you know, override their default behaviors. And then we can have all these granular controls with the margins and the paddings. And inline block is very powerful. And then we also learn about floats. And then if you remember from the other tutorials, we used inline block and widths coming down here to our W50, W25, and W33. We learned how to use these to make a really lightweight and simple framework. And then using these little test classes we made, these test classes will help you to lay out your blocks that are the fundamental building blocks of, you know, your page for that framework. So we've learned quite a bit, and you're well on your way to becoming a full stack developer. So we have learned HTML, which is hypertext markup language. And I haven't explicitly said hypertext markup language yet, but that's what HTML stands for. Hypertext, remember we talked about the hypertext link, or the hyperlink. And that's just what the naming convention they came up. But markup means you mark something up, like you take a magic marker and you make things happen on a piece of paper, right? Well, this HTML is what they consider a markup language. And another, there's a couple of them out there that are similar, and XML is a markup language, and there's some other weird ones out there. And then we learned about CSS, which is cascading style sheets. Cascading style sheets. And coming back to our code, that's what we learned up here, the global styles.css. And this is all the stuff we've done so far, applying all the styles that we've learned to make the website look nice and clean. And so the next thing we're going to learn about is something called JavaScript. And a lot of times you'll see it typed that way with camel case, kind of camel case, but JavaScript. Now, one thing I want to show you is that there's a thing called Java language, and this is a programming language made by Oracle. In JavaScript, and this AI crap, JavaScript is not, has nothing to do with Java, so don't get those two things confused. this is a programming language, whereas JavaScript is a scripting language, right? So I just want to let you be aware of that. Don't mix them up if you're brand new to JavaScript. And once again, I'm going to reference you to explore W3 Schools and the JavaScript. They've got a really awesome tutorial series. And once again, you can see on the left where I'm scrolling, you have tons and tons and tons of JavaScript things that you're going to be learning about in your development journey. So, and you can spend weeks and months learning about all these things and how they work, right? And I'll link this page in the description below. So coming back to our page, we've got JavaScript. So HTML is like the bones in your body, your skeleton. If you're talking about a human being, it's what gives it support, right? Cascading style sheets is what kind of puts your skin and your eye color and your hair color and your hair and all that kind of stuff. It does the styling. In JavaScript, you can kind of think of it as the muscle. You can think of it the brains and muscles kind of working together, because with JavaScript you can do so many powerful things with JavaScript. Like you can come in here and you can change the test title, or you can change the content, or you can add content, or you can delete content, or you can come in here and change the styles. And there's so many probably hundreds of things that you can do. And as you get more advanced with JavaScript, you'll learn how to use JavaScript, and you'll get into a thing called AJAX, which is asynchronous JavaScript XML to do databases. And in my case, I'm going to be using PHP. You'll see here, you see JavaScript and script. And when you think about it in terms of the programming sphere, like coding, script is like a script, like a movie script, or a script for actors and actresses. You know, you give a script to an actor or actress and you say, hey, I want you to say these lines. I want you to move to this part of the stage. I want you to do this action. I want you to show this emotion. So a script, JavaScript is a scripting language. So it's going to say, hey, do this thing, change this element, style this element, fetch this, or go get that, or replace this. So I wanted to give out that script analogy for actresses and actors of a script. You follow a script. So in this lesson, we are going to start with the very basics of JavaScript. So if you've never done JavaScript before, I'll walk you step by step and set the foundation to bigger and better things. Okay? So let's come in here and let's change our topic title to JavaScript Basics. Okay, well, how do we make JavaScript work? Well, now we got to talk about JavaScript tags. And you can put tags in several different places, but to start out, we will put the JavaScript tag within the body for now. So go ahead and start typing out script, and you can see it's coming up with script. Go ahead and click that or tab, and you've got a script, right? Now let's do a really simple basic script. And one of the most simple things that you can do is something called an alert. And you've probably seen these in your web browsing journeys, those little pop-ups that say, do you want to do this? Do you want to leave? Do you want to do that? And you hit OK. And well, the way that they do that is with a thing called an alert method. And so all you have to do is start typing alert, right? And then you need to do an open and closing parentheses, right? So in here in the alert, we need to put some text. Well, let me go ahead and just hit alert like that and hit Control S to save. Now let's go ahead and come to our page and we'll hit refresh. And we have this little pop-up. This is called an alert, or an alert box. And you've seen these all over the internet. And it says, this page says. And this is the default behavior when you just put alert. So what you do is you need to come in here and put some text, right? And let's just say test alert. Hit Control S to save. We'll come back to our page and we'll hit refresh. And it says this page says test alert. So you can see here we've got our text that we put in here, test alert, and test alert. So you notice that as soon, we'll hit OK to clear that, as soon as we load the page or refresh the page, boom, it says, hey, do this, alert, right? Because, you know, remember we run top to bottom with our script and with our code. So as the page renders out, it's going to see this script tag and say, hey, do the alert, and then come down here and then render all this stuff out. Okay. And so what happens if we take this script, we'll go ahead and Control X, and then we move it all the way to the bottom. Let's see what happens. And paste that there. Control S to save. Hit the refresh. And you can see that it's still putting up the alert. So let's go ahead and just hit Control Z to get everything back to where it was, and hit Control S again. So what happens if we do this? What happens if we do alert here, test alert, let's make that test alert 0, and then test alert 1. Control S to save. We'll come back to our page, and what do you think is going to happen? Well, let's refresh. Okay, we see test alert 1, and it executed. Now, the way this alert thing works is that it's going to, it needs an input before it's going to do the next thing. And you can see we hit OK and then test alert 1. So we can see here that it's rendering, this script is executing line by line, 1, 2, and then for good measure, let's do 2. Okay, once again, test alert 0, test alert 1, test alert 2, hit OK. So it's going in order, 1, 2, 3. Now you can put the script in the body, and you can put it in different places in the body if you want to, but that is not a good coding practice, and you'll understand why when I talk about scope. And scope has to deal with when pieces or when parts of the page are rendered, and if the script can actually find that content, and I'll make that clear later on. But you don't want to structure your code and like have your script here and then have a bunch of content and a bunch of divs and then put another script here and then come down here and then put your script. You don't want to do it like that, because it makes the code terrible and hard to manage, and if anyone comes to look at your code, they're not going to know what the heck's going to go on. If you're going to put any scripts in your body, you need to put them in one spot, but you're going to have to be careful of where you put that. So the next place that we can put a script is up in the head. So let's go ahead and copy this, Control X, Control V to paste. And so we're going to move the script up into the head section. You know, we have our head tags up here. So let's go ahead and see what happens here. Control S to save, come to our page, refresh. Hey, test alert 0, test alert 1. So you can see we have our script here that's embedded in our head. It's doing the same as we had it before down here in the body. Well, you can do this, but it's not the best practice, because you potentially are going to run into what they call scope issues, as I mentioned before. And scope has to deal with when the script gets executed and if it can actually find the divs and the elements and the contents in here, executes, and when all these elements come in here and get rendered out. So in today's modern web development coding practices, what we do is we link to an external JavaScript file. And I want to go ahead and show you how to make that happen now. So let's go ahead and just delete our script that we have here. Control S to save and make sure the changes, yeah, we don't have any more alerts. Similar to what we did here to make an external style sheet, we're going to do the same thing with a JavaScript file, right? So let's come to our folder, right, our project folder, and let's find the JavaScript folder and click into that. And then let's make a JavaScript file. And to do this, we just right click, new, text document, and let's go ahead and type in global scripts. And once again, global means all over, the entire globe, the whole thing, and scripts. Okay, for JavaScripts, we'll just go global scripts .js, and the file extension is JS for a JS file. All right, go ahead and hit enter. Yep, we know it's going to change it. Hit OK, pull that down, and you can see here on the left hand side we have our JavaScript file. So let's go ahead and open it, and it's empty, of course. It's a brand new file. Nothing's going to be into it, right? So let's come back here. So how do you link the JavaScript? How do you say, hey, index file, go get the JavaScript file over here in this folder? Well, very similar. Well, the same kind of way we did with the CSS. So once again, let's use a script tag. Start typing in script. All right, and you have this script tag that came up. And well, how do you link it? Well, you type in src, source. And for the script tags, you use the source attribute. And then hit tab, and you have equals quotation marks. So like here, we have our CSS folder, right? And here we're going to use our JavaScript folder. So let's type in JS, and you can see we have the folder icon. Click that, and then hey, our global scripts is here. Cool. There we go. So now we are linked. We have our HTML page is now linking to our JavaScript file. So we need to come to our empty JavaScript file, and let's put something simple in it, like we did before. Alert, and then let's say linked script. Link script fired. And I always like to do this even I've been doing this for like 10 years now. I always make sure my files work because I like to do my quality assurance as I go. So when I set up a script file, I always put in link script fired or fired just to make sure that it works. Control S to save. Come back to our page. Control S to save to make sure it knows we changed things. We'll come here and we'll hit refresh. And hey, linked script fired. So great. Now we have a linked JavaScript to our HTML page. So this is the standard practice. This is the good habit to get into for writing your scripts because it makes your code nice and tidy. And I talked about earlier in the series a thing called separation of concerns. And as you can see, and separation of concerns basically means you keep like HTML with HTML, CSS with CSS, and JavaScript with JavaScript. But that thing has kind of gone, but the separations of concerns has kind of been blown out the window with all these frameworks. Okay, but I digress. So we've got our code. We have our HTML code in here. That's all pretty much HTML markup. All our CSS is CSS in here, and all our JavaScript is here. And as we go along, I'll talk about modularization. And so you can make modular code. You can modularize or make modular scripts. So for instance, we can have one thing that's for all the scripts. Like when you apply this to your other pages, you can include this in the head of your other pages. Well, this particular script is going to say, do everything all across all pages. But what you can come in here and do is if you want to, if you have some sort of other content that you want to target, and then what you can come in here and do is you can write specific scripts for specific pages, like on your index page, your home page, you may have only some JavaScript that only you need to use for the index page. So you can do an index page, right? We'll come up here, like the index page here on the left. Maybe you only have some sort of script that needs to be run for index, but you don't need to do for careers or news or locations. And so you would just put this on your index page. And then like on your news page, if you had some certain scripts that you only need for the news page, right? Your news page up here, when you click on that to the news page, you only need to put it here. And that makes it so you're not sending so much code over the wire or over the network, and you can modularize your code. And that makes finding code easier because you can say, hey, all my news stuff is in my news.js, and then all my index scripts are in my index file. Meanwhile, I have my globals, which will do things like the nav, and then a footer or a header and things like that. And I'll show you more in depth about modularization of code when I get into my full stack framework series. But just for now, I just want you to be aware that modularization of your code will be important. Okay, so let's go ahead and get rid of that. Control S to save, Control S to save. So we are good to go here. Everything is working as we like it. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about that's going to be fundamental to your JavaScript journey, and it's going to be so helpful in understanding how things work, why things break, and debugging and making sure things work, is a thing called console.log and the developer tools. And I talked about the developer tools earlier on in this series. And if you come to your web page, and if you hit the F12, I'm using Google Chrome, and Firefox should have the same or similar thing. You hit F12, you get this developer tools pop up on the right. All right. So if you remember, we had elements, sources, network, performance, memory, and all this kind of stuff. And here is the console. Now, here you can basically take all your JavaScript things and you can render them out to see and make sure that they're working. Or when things aren't working, you can start to debug why they're not working. So let's come in here, and I want to introduce you to something called console.log. And we haven't talked about objects yet, but console is an object. And in this case, it's referencing this here, right? And we'll go over objects more in depth as we get later on. But just for now, just understand that this is an object. And we have something called log, which is a method. And basically, when you see a dot and then something after the dot, when you're dealing with JavaScript, you've got a method, you've got an object, and then a method. And this method is going to do something or make changes to this object. So when we use console.log, what this is actually doing is the JavaScript is saying, hey, console, I want you to log whatever I put in these parentheses. So console, hey console, I want you to put something in here. And that's basically what's going to happen. So let's put in test content. All right. So we're going to put this text in here of test content using this console log. All right. So let's come in here. And you can see there's nothing, right? So let's hit refresh. Oops, I forgot to take out the script. That's no big deal. And we can see test content is now in our console log. So let me go ahead and comment this out so we don't fire that again. And then for fun, let's copy this, paste it, and let's go test content 00, test content 01. And you might have noticed I've been using 00 and 01, and you'll understand why I'm using this later on in the series. So what happens now? We have two console logs. Well, we have test content 0 and test content 01. Well, that's cool. So again, this is really basic JavaScript, but console log is going to be your best friend when you get into the frying pan of doing JavaScript development. And then building upon this, the next thing that I want to get into are things called variables. And what variables are, if you remember back in your schooling days, you had like x equals 9 and y equals 15, and then you did x plus y. x plus y equals, and then you come in here and do, you know that x is 9, and then you have y is 15. So variables are like the stuff that you learned way back in the day with math. And the way that you create a variable, there's a couple ways. And the two simple ways is you can use this key term, and I use keyword, and keyword is a term that you need to also remember. So you use var, and let's say var x is equal to 9. Okay? So we're saying this var, which means variable, x is equal to 9. And so we haven't talked about data types yet, but 9 is an integer. And I'll get into the various data types as we go along. So what happens if we take this x, and let's go ahead and delete all of this for now, and then let's put that x into the log. Control S to save. We'll come back to our page. And let me scoot this over some more. And then we'll hit refresh. And it's kind of hard to see, but there, you've got 9. And what's really cool, which makes debugging really nice, is you come here on the right-hand side, and it says global scripts JS :6. And that's saying, hey, this 9 thing is on line 6 of your global scripts. And this is going to be so handy when you're trying to figure out why things work or why they don't work. So this is so great that they've incorporated this into the console log here, right? The console. So we learned about the var. Now you can use var, but they have, for whatever reason, a lot of people don't like using var. And there's nothing wrong with using var, but it seems like the standard coding practice today is to use let. Everyone use let. Okay? And it's the same thing. It's not going to change anything, and the behavior is the same. So let's go ahead and hit let y equal an integer of 15. All right, let's go ahead and put y in here, and Control S to save. Come here and refresh the page, and now we've got 15. Okay, well, that's cool. Let me go ahead and do this. Hit X. I'll put a couple of spaces. Control S to save. We'll come in here and hit refresh. You can see here 9 is on script 7 and 15 is on global scripts line 11. 7 and 11. Cool. All right, so we have a var x and let y. How about we do let z equals test content 00. Let's do that again. So we'll come here, tighten up the code, come here and do console.log and parentheses z, and Control S to save. And you noticed here I left off a semicolon. Now you can do this in modern JavaScript, and people do it all the time, but I always like to do the old school way and always complete with the terminating semicolon. And so we have this z is equal to this string test content 0. And talking about the data types once again, the 9, you can see I didn't use the quotation marks. And with data types, the standard convention is if you see quotation marks, what's going to be in here is going to be a string, right? And with like 9 and 15, those are a data type that are considered an integer. And let's go ahead and do let a equals, and we'll use a single quotation mark and we'll say a. Why not? Let's go h. Okay, Control S. I'm coming down here, console.log parentheses a. Okay, so we've got X, which is X and Y, which are integers, here. And we've got Z, which is a string. And then we have A, which is called a character or a char, a character. And a character means just one letter or one number like this. Just for demonstration's sake, it's just going to be one simple thing, right? Control S to save. So let's come to our page, refresh, and we've got 9, 15, and then we have our test content, which is a string data type, and then we have our H, which is a char or character, right? And so I've mentioned the data type. So there's this method called typeof, and what typeof will do is it'll tell you what kind of data type this is for each of these. And for that to work, you need to use, a variable, an object, right? You need to use it for X, Y, Z, and A. And to do a typeof, there's a method that you use, and you just start typing type, T-Y-P, and you'll see typeof. Go ahead and click that, and you need to use parentheses, right? Because that's the way that this was developed. So what you'll do is you'll take your X and you'll put it inside the parentheses, and that's a parameter that is being passed in to this typeof method or function. And typeof is an inbuilt function or method of JavaScript. So you don't have to explicitly type it out. It already comes with the program, if you want to think of it like that. Let's go ahead, and when you put typeof, when you use a thing like this inside the parentheses, you need to get rid of that last semicolon. So let's go ahead and Control X that, paste that here, Control S. So we want to know the type of 9. And let's see what happens. We come here, we come to our page, refresh, and we've got number. So in this case, it's saying, hey, this is a number. And you gotta know that this is, so I use the term integer, and that is a data type, but in the case of JavaScript, it's saying that a number is an integer. So you need to know that. So in programming languages, you'll know that there's if you've worked with other programming languages, you know that we have integers. But for JavaScript, just know that a number is basically the equivalent of an integer. So what happens if we do type of Z? Come in here, paste that. We'll change that to Z, Control S, and then come here, refresh, and we see we have string. Okay. Now what happens if we do type of A, Control S, hit refresh? It's also string. Well, this is what happens when you bounce in between languages like JavaScript and programming languages like C and C++. Because working with C++ and C, you know that you explicitly call these things as a character, and that the conventions are this is going to be a character. But with JavaScript, well, it still considers it a string. So if you're language agnostic and you bounce between like web development and C++ and programming, you're going to carry over your programming mindset over into the scripting language. So what I did say about these being integers is true, right? And about this being considered a string is true, and this being a char. Because in C, when you see these kinds of things, so one thing you're going to hear about like JavaScript and C, like you'll hear something like JavaScript is a loosely typed language, whereas C is a strictly typed language. And as I mentioned before, this is a string in C, and this is a char or character in C. But since JavaScript is quote-unquote loosely typed, it's going to say both of these are strings. Whereas if you try to pull this off in C, you're going to have an error. And because in C, you explicitly tell it to be this data type, where in this loosely typed language, it's just going to go and treat everything as a string. And that's why earlier when I said 9 is going to be an integer, and that's why JavaScript called it a number, because it's loosely typed. That's just some information for you to know about as you develop your programming and coding career. All right, well, we've got some stuff to the console log here, and we've got our variables, 9, 15, test content 00, and H. We've got the type of, and so we've been console logging all of our stuff here. So the next thing I want to talk about are things like scope and actually how to render content out to our HTML dynamically. And to do this, let's go ahead and for now, I want to go ahead and comment out this linked script because I want to do everything on the HTML so I can so it's easier to follow instead of bouncing back and forth to the different files. So we'll comment that out, and then we'll come in here, and we haven't talked about a thing called the document object model. And let me go ahead here and see if I can W3 schools and type in DOM. It's often referred to as the DOM. And I'll also put this page here, and you see it's called the document object model. And it has a nice layout of how everything works. And if we come back to our HTML code, remember we talked about the doc type HTML, and we have the HTML tags. Well, the document object model is, we consider that this whole thing, this whole document, the whole HTML is a document, right? Like a piece of paper. So this document, all this here is an object. And we haven't talked too much about objects a whole lot, but going through this tutorial, you'll get the feel of what an object is. So each component, each part of these things is a part of the document model. JavaScript has many built-in methods and functions, if you want to see it that way, methods of changing and manipulating the DOM, or the document object model, and coming in here and manipulating different things. And referring back to this page, you've got this little tree diagram of the document, and we have our root element HTML, which is this. You know, we have the opening and the closing tags, right? And then each element, like the head, the title, the text, all of these things are objects of this DOM tree. They're all like, you can think of them like what are those things, like the Russian dolls that have the little dolls nested inside? Well, it's a similar thing, but in this case they'll be called nodes, and we'll learn about that later on. And so this is just a good basic tree to understand what's going to happen. And you're going to hear the term DOM manipulation, and that's basically saying using JavaScript to change things within the document object. Okay, so let's put a practical demonstration of this. Let's create a p tag, okay, and let's give it an ID of p tag _00, just to make it simple. This is the p tag, and it's the first p tag, right? I want to put a script here in the body so we can see easily what's going to go on with how this DOM manipulation works. So we talked about the DOM. Again, DOM is document object model. The JavaScript has a thing called document, and document is like a variable. Like we came over here in the JavaScript and we declared a variable. Well, document is just automatically declared a variable through JavaScript. So this document, this variable is an object that represents everything right here, like, right? It represents everything in this whole entire HTML document that I'm scrolling up and down in, right? So we want to go in the document, this whole HTML thing, and we want to find this p tag, this p element. And they have a method, an inbuilt method called getElementById. the way you do that is you hit period and you start typing get element, and you can see that we're starting to get all these different methods. And you can see right here, getElementById. Let's go ahead and click that, and then we'll go ahead and do the parentheses. And the way that this works is you want to reference this ID because it says, hey, get element, singular, one, get element by ID, which is the ID that we've been using so far. So what you want to do is you want to copy that, and you want to put some quotations in there. It doesn't matter if it's two or single or double quotes. And you want to put the p tag in there, and then you want to finish it off, right? So we've got this object with a method, but we just can't, this won't do anything. You had to set this to its own variable. So what I like to do to keep the naming convention simple and easy to follow is we'll say let ptag_00 equal to document, remember document HTML, get element by ID, this ID ptag. And so what this is going to do, it's going to set this variable to go get this ptag as a object. So let's go ahead and come in here and let's console.log, and then let's put this ptag variable, let's put this ptag 00 variable into our console. Control S to save, come back to our page and hit refresh. Well, we can see here on our console that we've got ptag. Let me zoom out a little bit. And you're going to have all these tons and tons and tons of different, what I like to call attributes. That's probably not the right term, but these are all the things that are associated with the ID, with this particular ptag, right? So we'll come in here and we can see all these different things. And let's come down to like attributes. There's no attributes. Let's come down to ID. So it's saying of this ptag, and it's saying this ptag element, it has one of its things is it has an ID of ptag. And as you go along, you'll get more aware of how to use these kinds of things, right? But just for now, just understand that this ptag is now an object of this variable. This variable is representing this ptag. Let's go ahead and delete that. So how do we put text into this thing? How can we dynamically render text into this empty ptag? Well, we'll take the variable, which is representing the object, right? Ptag dot inner HTML. Okay, so this is a method that's inbuilt into JavaScript. You don't have to make it. It's already part of JavaScript, and it's going to say make the HTML markup in here in this ptag, inner HTML. Let's set that equal to dynamically rendered content. Okay, hit Control S. So what is happening here is it's saying get the ptag, the variable, as an object, get the ptag, and use this inner HTML, which is going to say, hey, inside this HTML, right up here in this blank, right here, right? I want you to put dynamically rendered content. Okay? So, through the magic of JavaScript, let's go ahead and hit refresh. And there we go. We've got dynamically rendered content. Well, that's cool. So we've learned the really basic foundation of DOM manipulation, of how to change your DOM dynamically with JavaScript. Now, I want to talk about a thing called scope. And remember that our pages and our scripts always render from top to bottom. And you'll notice that we've put our p tag up here. It comes before the execution of the script. So what happens if we take our script, Control X, Control V to paste. Now what happens if we put the script above the element? Well, Control S to save, come back to our page, and hit refresh. Uh-oh, nothing's happening. What's going on? Well, if we hit F12, we see we've got an error in our console. And this is why I said before, the console is going to be your best friend for development. It's going to help you debug your code and figure out why things don't work. And learning how to read and understand what the console is spitting out at you, that's going to take time and experience. And you're going to see uncaught type error, cannot set properties of null, setting inner HTML, and you're like, what does that mean? I have no idea what that means. And again, this will come with time, but what this is saying, null means nothing. It doesn't exist. And properties, we haven't talked about that yet, but it's saying like a property is a color or a shape or a size. In this case, we're saying a property of text. And the inner HTML, it's saying we can't put HTML in there, but we're like, but we did. We said right here, get the element and then put the content in there. Well, again, when the page is rendered, it's going to come down here and it's going to hit the script first, and it's going to say look for the p tag, and go in here and find the p tag and assign it to a variable p tag _00, and then it's going to say, hey, put this dynamically rendered content in the p tag. But the thing is, to the interpreter, to the rendering engine, we haven't rendered the p tag yet. It doesn't know that the p tag exists. So that's why we're getting this error. And kind of touching on the differences between like scripting languages and programming languages, if you've dealt with like C or C++ or C# or Java, you compile it. You compile whatever code you have, and that's going to create a binary which will execute everything at once. And it goes in and it does the whole thing. But with the scripting language, it's going to go top to bottom and interpret in real time, or what they say, just in time interpreting, right? So once again, load the page. It's going to come in here. It's going to come in here, find the script. Oh, it doesn't work. So that's why when we talk about scope, you have to be mindful of scope. Okay, let's go ahead and copy that. And let's go ahead and put it up here in the head for even more demonstration. Control S to save. Come back to our page. And even though we put it in the head, it still messes up. And that's why earlier I said it's not a good practice to put your script like these embedded scripts into your head tag, because you're going to run into scope issues. Okay, so let's go ahead and Control Z, get it back working again, format the code, come back here and hit refresh. Now everything is working again. Okay, so I want to copy all this code, and copy it, and I want to come back up to our linked script tag. Let me go ahead and comment all this code out, and I'll come down here and paste our code that was working before. Hit Control S to save our script, our external script, and I want to go ahead and comment that code out. Hit Control S, and then I want to go ahead and relink our script, our external script. So let's go ahead and uncomment that out. Hit Control Save. So we're saying, hey, HTML document, come in here, get the style sheet, get the script, and our script is going to say, come over here to our script page and get the p tag, and then enter HTML of dynamically rendered content into our p tag. So let's see what happens. Control S to save, come to our web page, refresh. Oh no, we've got the error again. Well, you still have to deal with the scope. You still have to deal with the scope when you're using external style sheets, because again, it's rendering top to bottom, so you get the script and it's rendering out. It's trying to find the object that we've assigned here to the p tag, and it's trying to put that content in here, but it doesn't know it exists yet. So how do we fix this? Well, there's a flag or a boolean that you put in here, and it's called defer. Now what this defer flag does, or attribute, it tells the rendering engine or the browser to say, when you come to the script, I want you to defer. And defer means put off, put till the end. I want you to put this, I want you to execute this script till the end of the page. So what that's going to do is when this thing renders out, the rendering engine comes in here and says doc type HTML head link. We'll go ahead and grab the style sheets. We're going to see the script, that the script exists, but put this off until the end. And we're going to keep rendering. We'll render the test title, and then, hey, we're going to have this p tag. It's in the document object model now, and then it's going to do all our other code, and it's going to come all the way to the bottom. And when it hits the bottom of the page, it's going to say, okay, now let's grab this script and execute the script. And remember, here's where you put our variable for p tag. That's the object, and where we put our dynamically rendered content. So Control S to save, Control S to save, using the script with the defer boolean or defer flag in there. And if everything worked right, hey, it works again. And so this is a very important concept that I hammer in early on for you all to know is scope, because when you get your head buried in code and you're starting to make your websites and web applications more and more complex, scope is going to be an issue. And it's always good when you have your modularized code to defer your scripts to the end of the page, so that when this thing renders, all of your targeted elements, so all your elements are going to be loaded and known to the document object model. This way JavaScript can reference them. So I think this is a pretty good intro to JavaScript. You know, we've talked about the console log, and you know, the console logged here. We've talked about scope and the importance of scope, and we've talked about doing linked external scripts, and very importantly the defer, which is something you're going to need to use a lot in your code. And we talked about putting scripts, you know, in your body, like if you put it up here versus if you put a script all the way at the bottom, and things like that. So with that, I need to get a drink of water because my voice is going hoarse, and I need to get ready to go to the gym, and I look forward to the next JavaScript tutorial. Bye-bye.